Well, hello there, chicas. Welcome back to my kitchen. This is Candace coming to you from Vancouver. It's been a little while since I've been able to make a video, but today I'm thinking Mother Nature forgot us here in Vancouver. I mean, it is a beautiful day, don't get me wrong, but it's 14 degrees. I mean, it snowed in Calgary this week. I'm thinking that because we are going to the Stanley Cup playoffs, that perhaps Mother Nature thinks it needs to stay wintertime, but I am not with her. So I was trying to hold off to do this when the summer was kind of feeling like it was actually here, but since it hasn't, I really wanted to show you a recipe that I've been making for literally about 20 years, and it was really good to actually do it this time because I've never written it down. It's always been one of those recipes that leans very well towards handful of this, handful of that, throw it in there, bake it, eat. So this time I got to actually really work it out and play with the ingredients a bit to make sure I got them right. So what I'm going to make today is a cheesy tomato pie, and if you've never had a tomato pie before, I highly recommend that you try them. And there's lots of versions out there, and in the height of summer I like to do one that's super simple, that's basically just tomatoes. But today, because we're still in a little bit of off season, I've had to find the best possible tomatoes I could. I'm doing the one that I really like that has a very strange but necessary ingredient in it, and that is mayonnaise. I know, it's a little weird, but it's true. The first time I ever had this dish was down in Georgia, and my sister and her family just got back from Teepee Island, I believe it's called, in Savannah, which is her favorite place on earth, and it made me think of making this dish, as well as my cohort out there, Kathy Bray from Erin, Ontario, in this contest. She loves the South as well, so I was hoping that all of those influences and positive effects would come into this recipe today. So I'm going to introduce you to the really simple ingredients that we've got going on. And so what I started with was one sweet yellow onion. You can just use cooking onions. It doesn't really matter because I've caramelized it. So I caramelized it with just a little bit of butter. I don't want these too wet, and about a half a teaspoon of thyme. And I just let them cook down till the edges got just a bit brown, and I threw in a clove of garlic just for the last couple of minutes so that we could really see how things were going along. And then what I've got is our half a cup of mayo. I know, I use half the fat mayo in this one just because it's always what I have on hand, but you can use what you like. And we of course have our Philadelphia Star. My favorite product, which you already know if you've seen my other videos, is the urban garlic. And in this recipe I actually do find that the full fat is kind of necessary. I find that the lower fat items just, it makes it a little wet. So I've used a heaping quarter cup of our urban garlic cream cheese. I've got 3 cups of tomatoes here that I've seeded and really got the water out of, and you can either use just a towel or a paper towel and just dry them off best you can. And basically you want the ripest tomatoes that you can find, and even these ones that have been sitting for a little while are still a little wet. So I'm just gonna dry them off a little bit before I continue to chop them into here. And then what I'm going to add to the tomatoes is a chiffonade of our fresh basil, which is by far my favorite spice. I love this spice, and a chiffonade is just a very fancy way of saying get your rolling devices in. So I've just layered all of the basil together, all together, and all I'm going to do is roll it up like a little cigar, like that, and then take a good sharp knife and just very finely slice it so that you have these little tiny shards. Basil is one of those herbs that definitely bruises quite easily, so you can have those brown edges that makes it a little bit darker. It doesn't ruin it, but that's what you're doing. And if you're using a dull knife or you're chopping too forcibly, the basil will actually brown. So what we want is just a nice little chiffonade of basil. And then the other item that we have, now I know you can't tell because it's all white, but is the rest of our cheesy dreamy goodness. And this is a mix of about 2 cups of equal amounts of Gruyere, mozzarella, and aged white cheddar. Now I would recommend that you play with any ingredients that you want in this recipe and replace and do the cheese that you really love the best. The only one I would say that really kind of makes the recipe is the Gruyere. So if you want to switch out any of the other ones, go ahead, but please, the first time you make it, use the Gruyere because it's really something quite special. And to the cheese mixture that we have here, these are the changes that I've kind of made over the years to just suit my own personal tastes. And what I've chosen to do is add about, I think this is about a teaspoon of dry mustard. You can use hot mustard if you wish. It will change the taste of the dish for sure. So I use regular dry mustard, and I just sprinkle it right on top of the cheese, and it goes in there. And then I have going to put our mayonnaise right in with the cheese. Excuse me. Can I be louder? Could I be louder? Okay, and then our cream cheese. Get it all in there. Good stuff. And then basically, move my little tomatoes out of the way, all we're going to do is just mix this little guy up. So you want it nice and smooth, well, as smooth as you can. You want it well incorporated. I mean, it is all going to melt in the pie. And the pie itself really does lean well towards a frozen pie crust that you can get at the store, which is perfect, just because it really cuts your time down quite a bit. I've chosen to make my pie crust today, which is hiding back there because this is like the 4th pie crust I've ever made, and you're not going to be allowed to see it till later, till it's all hidden. I'm still learning, so I wanted to make one today because I have to make a pie tomorrow that needs to look nice. So all you need to do with your prepared pie crust is let it come to room temperature. You can just don't let it be frozen completely. So you want to just get it to room temperature a little bit. And then what we're going to do is just toss all of this together, and I'm going to show you how it comes. So I've moved forward a little bit in the recipe, and even though I don't really want you to see my dismal little pie crust, I figured I had to show you eventually. And all I've done is spread our yummy caramelized onions right on the bottom of the pie crust. And I did, if you are choosing to make your own pie crust, I did pre-bake this. So it's almost completely baked. And the only trick that I would recommend, even though I'm not a pastry expert, because this is quite a wet pie, I chose to actually seal my pie crust with a little bit of egg wash, so that when it baked, it's going to have a nice seal on it and not get really soggy, because I like this pie for a couple of days. And what I've done, so I've put the onions onto the bottom, and all we're going to do is mix our tomatoes and basil together here. Stir all this together. It's so pretty. Really is my favorite combination. And to the tomatoes, I did put a hefty amount of black pepper and a good amount of salt. Tomatoes and salt are best friends. And basically we're just going to top the onions with our tomatoes. And depending on how big or small your tomatoes are, will be the amount you're going to use. I chose to use Roma tomatoes with a mix of regular hothouse tomatoes because I found them to be the best at the market, basically. And as long as you can really get them dry. Again, I'm saying this because I don't want you ending up with soggy pie. That would be bad. And then we're going to sprinkle just a little bit. I use about a half a teaspoon of crushed red pepper flakes on this, but you can use what you like to your taste. Okay, so I have all of my ingredients on top of our little pie crust, and now it's time for the cheese to go on top. And it's a bit of a task to get it all even, so excuse me if it doesn't look all that attractive for a second. So we've got this all in here. The original version that I had of this pie was, I believe I was actually in Alabama, and not Georgia, but they had it completely with mayonnaise and just one type of cheese. It was still delicious, but I didn't really, I mean, it was kind of like tomato pie, you know what I mean? Like, it didn't really have too much of the other flavors coming through. So over the years, as I've said, I've doctored and manipulated this little guy best I could to make the flavors that I enjoy the most. And the last little bit here. I really would love to be able to tell you why the mayonnaise works in this. I have been asked for this recipe by friends, and they've been like, oh, well, that doesn't sound, you know, very good. Can we replace the mayonnaise with something else? And the only thing I can say is no, you really can't. I don't know why, but it really works. It adds this kind of tangy, sharp taste to it, which I think blends really well with the cream cheese. And so those two items are, in my opinion, a match made in heaven, much like the basil and tomato. So we have completed our little masterpiece here, even if you well, you can't really call my pie crust a masterpiece, but I will today, and I'm going to just throw this in a 350-degree oven for about 20 minutes, 25 minutes, and it's really going to depend, ladies, on your tomatoes. So if you have a little bit of like super ripe ones that are a little bit wet, this pie might actually take a little bit longer, and so I apologize. I know we're supposed to get these done in an hour, but this one might be a little bit of me being rebellious and throwing one in that might take an hour and 15. So I just want you to cook it until it's basically completely set and you're going to smell it. That is the #1 way to know. So I would start checking the pie at about 20-25 minutes, and if your crust starts to get a little bit too brown, just put a little ring of tin foil around them, and you'll save the day. Okay, see you in a few minutes. Everybody, we're back, and after 35 golden minutes, we have this beautiful pie. I wish you could smell it. It just smells sensational in here, making me very, very hungry. And this pie, much like a lasagna, you need to have a bit of patience. Let it sit for about 10 minutes, come down to cool, and you should have no problem cutting it nice and evenly without oozing all over the place. And I would serve this with just a really nice, simple green salad, something tart to cut through all that richness of the cheese. And really it is a lovely dish at brunch, at lunch, at dinner, and especially when in the height of summer when the tomatoes are just gorgeous. And I know that tomato pies are made all over the place, and I'd love to hear from you and let me know what your favorite tomato pie recipe is, and I'll put it into my repertoire and give it a chance. So thank you for joining me. That's fantastic. I'm going to go eat, and good luck everybody next week. It's our final week, so I'm looking forward to everybody's entries in the dessert round, and all the best to you. I really hope it's warm somewhere you are. Bye everybody.